Hello, this is your e-learning assignment for May 6th. So I'm happy to tell you that all you have to do today is read. I just want you to start chapter 5. So if you haven't answered your chapter 4 questions from yesterday, go ahead and do that today. Finish that up. And then all you have to do is start chapter 5. It's about 10 minutes longer if you're listening to the audiobook than chapter 4. It's a couple pages longer, maybe not even a couple. It might only be one page longer than chapter 4 if you're reading it. So not a lot longer, but it's a little bit longer. So I did want to give you 2 days to get through chapter 5. So the questions for chapter 5 are not due till tomorrow. But if you want to take a peek at the questions so you're prepared, went ahead and put the study questions down here. So if you can see where my mouse is kind of hovering. Tomorrow's assignment is this e-learning chapter 5 study questions. So if you want to look at those and see what they are going to be asking you, you can go ahead and click on that. If you do have any questions or concerns about the study questions, please let me know. I'm available via email. I hope you're all doing well. And let me go ahead and give you some of your answers for chapter 4 from yesterday, since I promised to do that today. So for chapter 4, how is the setting different in this chapter, and how do your feelings change because of that difference? The setting shifts from the bunkhouse to Crooks's room. So it's focusing on the solitude or the loneliness of Crooks's room in the barn. So just like the man, Crooks, the room is somber and quiet. My feelings shift in this scene because I realize that he's suffering. He is feeling very lonely and isolated, and he is suffering like a prisoner in solitary confinement because of it. We don't really see that in any of the other chapters until chapter 4. So hopefully your feelings shift like that, because I think that was the author's intent in this chapter, is to make us feel a little bit sorry for Crooks. But if not, that was kind of how my feelings shifted. Is I started to realize how isolated and alone Crooks is, and how it really is affecting his personality. Number 2, why does Crooks have more items than most of the men? Take a look at his belongings, choose 3 specific items, and explain what they show about his character. His job, taking care of the horses, is a lot more permanent than any of the other work, like the ranch hands work. So ranch hands are hired to build fences. They're hired to maybe train horses. So their jobs are less permanent than somebody who has to take the day in, day out care of something at the ranch. So he's able to stay in that place a lot longer and build more wealth, or at least possessions, than any of the other workers. So in his room, there are many different items. You could have wrote about any of the different items. Some 3 items that I found specifically interesting were the alarm clock, the single barrel shotgun, and the dirty books. So the clock shows he's a little bit more isolated than the other men. No one stops by to wake him up. Nobody else gets up before him. He has to rely on the alarm clock. Nobody else wakes him up. So where other people in the bunkhouse might be awakened or awoken by other people around them moving around, he's so isolated that he has to have the alarm clock. The gun hints that he feels danger is lying around the corner. So it's either drunken individuals in the bunkhouse he has to worry about, it's wildlife that may stumble into his room, anything like that. And again, it shows the isolation, that he has to have a gun to defend himself. It's not like there's a bunch of men around him that can defend him. He has to defend himself, so he has to have that gun. And then finally, the dirty books could be shown as pornography. And since Crooks is a black man at this time, you may not realize this, but black men couldn't go to the cat house. So what is Crooks's outlet for that kind of sexual desire is maybe these books, these pornographic magazines, because he doesn't have an option to go to the cat house and look at women. So it again shows how lonely he is, how he still desires women's affection, or at least to look at women, but he doesn't have the option to go to the cat house, so he has to resort to pornography. So that's kind of the 3 things I want to talk about, but you could talk about any of the other items that Crooks has in his room. Number 3, despite the racial segregation of the time, Crooks asked to join Candy and Lenny on the dream farm. Later, he says he was just fooling. I wouldn't want to go to no place like that. What causes his change of heart? So I asked you to look at the 2 different moments in the scene. So first, when he seems like he's excited and gung-ho, that's when it's just Lenny and Curly. Just the 2 of them in the house or in the room. With Crooks. Nobody else is in the room. So then he's excited because it's just this old man and this, kind of mentally challenged man. So there's nothing to really fear in this situation. He's got these 2 people who aren't really going to judge him in any way, shape, or form. So he can get excited about this idea. The moment it changes is when Curly's wife enters the room. And he looks at her and he speaks to her and he realizes this is a farce, that he's never going to be able to leave. So Curly's wife is insulted that a black man should speak to her so forcibly. So she threatens to have him lynched if he steps out of line. And then this makes him say he was just fooling around. So it shuts him up real quick. So ultimately it's Curly's wife who makes him have the change of heart, which is a little heartbreaking when you think about it, because he totally was excited about this until she just totally shatters his dreams. Anyways, number 4, I could get you strung up on a tree so easy it ain't even funny. Who says this line? Discuss the power structure of the ranch. Which characters have power, which don't? Where does Crooks rate in terms of power on the ranch? All right, so I already talked to you about this in number 3. Curly's wife is the one who says this line to Crooks. So although she doesn't have as much power as her husband, she does have a lot of power because she's married to the boss's son. Okay, so her husband and her father-in-law are the top ranking power individuals. So the wife of those power ranking individuals are also going to have power, although she is not going to have as much power as Slim maybe would have. Although in terms of Crooks, she has a lot more power than Crooks, because Crooks is an African American, so he is low, low, low on the totem pole in this time period. That's not my feeling, but this is that time period. He's low, low, low in terms of power structure. So she's going to have a lot more power than Crooks would have. When we think about Candy, who's an old man, he also has less power because he's old. And so people don't listen to him anymore, which is kind of interesting because nowadays older people have more respect, or should have more respect, than younger people. Here in the ranch hand dynamic, the older man isn't as useful, so he isn't as highly respected, so he doesn't have as much power. Lenny also is going to be very, very low on the power totem pole because mentally he doesn't have the same capacity as the other ranch hands. All right, so George, Lenny, Whit, and Carlson, even though they're not going to rank as high as like Slim in terms of ranch hands, they are going to be a little higher than Crooks, again, which is sad because he's African American at this time period. So again, not my opinion, but just during this time period, African Americans were very, very low ranking in terms of power. Number 5, why is George unhappy when he returns to the ranch? Is he right to be upset? And explain your answer. So again, think about Lenny. Think about how George feels about Lenny. Think about him trying to protect Lenny. When he comes back home, George finds Lenny in Crooks's room, which opens Lenny up for all kinds of problems. First of all, Crooks should be left alone, really. Ultimately, he's kind of like the outcast of society. So Lenny has sought him out. He's purposely gone to his room. It's not like he's been invited there. So that could get him in trouble. So George finds Lenny where he's not supposed to be. So do you think he has a right to be upset? I kind of do, because Lenny, again, is not listening to some basic ground rules that George has laid out, which is frustrating. And so I can understand why he's upset. But again, Lenny doesn't have the mental capacity to always follow the rules. So maybe what could George have done to help him ensure that Lenny follows the rules? Maybe he could have done more things to ensure that. So that's kind of my opinion. What's your opinion on it? And that's what you need to do for 5. Number 6, the idea of loneliness is a key part of the book. Write 2 lines by Crooks, include a page number where he directly talks about his feelings of loneliness. There's lots of lines you can choose. I'm only going to give you 2. 1, books ain't no good. A guy needs somebody to be near him. And 2, I tell ya, a guy gets too lonely and he gets sick. Find those 2 lines and their page numbers and you can be done. Otherwise, find 2 other lines where he talks about loneliness, give me the page numbers, and that's it. Take care, guys. Have a great day.